If like a teenager wanted to choose their path and they don't know what to do, what do you think are like the best steps for them to take to get an idea of what direction they want to push themselves into?
What are you interested in? What are you passionate about? Because if you get into a career, you get into a job that isn't aligned to your interests, it's not aligned to your passion, you're going to wake up every Monday morning going, man, it's Monday morning again. Versus, hey, I'm really excited. I'm going to go learn something new. I'm going to go do something impactful. I'm going to do something that's meaningful.
If you were 16 years old and you had to start over today, what would be the first thing you would focus on learning? Everyone keeps telling you to pick a path, but what if that's actually terrible advice? Today, I'm sitting with Mr. Barnaby Jeans. He's changed careers 7 times in 30 years, working at some of the world's top companies. So if you're stressing out about choosing the right major or first job, this episode is for you. Mr. Jeans, welcome to the Young Leaders Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Malina. Thank you.
I'm super excited to have you on because we're going to have an interesting conversation. But before we start, some of our viewers may not know who you are. So, within 30 seconds, do you think you can explain and introduce yourself, what you do, and who you are?
I will certainly try. So, my name is Barnaby Jeans. Right now, I'm Senior Director at Thomson Reuters, a technology and content company. Been around the technology and IT industry for many, many years, across a number of sort of large names that some of your viewers may recognize, folks like Oracle and Microsoft. Moved all over the world, currently living in Seattle, Washington, but originally a Canadian and a Brit.
Oh, okay. Interesting. That I did not know about them. I think you did really well because we're right at the 30-second mark. Okay. So, we're going to start off by talking about your plan in your career. So, when you were a teenager, did you have like an actual plan of what you wanted to do in your career?
It's a great question. And I'm trying to think back to some of those days. I would say I don't know if I necessarily had a plan for my career specifically, but what I did know was what I was interested in. And from a very early age, I was very interested in computers. Now, thinking about your audience, you may kind of go, well, yeah, that's kind of an obvious thing. I'm a little bit older. So if I think back to when I was much younger, back in the 80s, computers were very different than we're talking about today, right? You didn't have cell phones, you didn't have iPads, you didn't have a lot of the things that we take for granted. But what I did know is I was interested and I got excited and I was passionate about this new technology. So I was always looking at how could I do something from a career standpoint that tied into that. So I didn't necessarily know precisely what that was, but I knew I wanted to be in that field.
Okay. So then did you have like an idea of what type of or I guess job you wanted to go into or when it came to computers because obviously it changed quite a bit during that time.
It's changed pretty dramatically. I think, one of my very, very first jobs in computers, I actually worked in a computer store. Like back in the day, again, before sort of the Best Buys and sort of the big box stores, I worked in a little small computer store building computers for people. So, I got right into the like, how do you assemble all of the different components, build traditional sort of PC desktops. I started there, and then again, while I was still in high school, I had the opportunity through a summer job to end up working for a company doing a little bit of network and computer related stuff for them. Again, it's very, very early days. And I was just hooked. I'm like, hey, how do I get a job doing something like this for a career? So that's really kind of how it really sparked and I got into that. I think as I evolved, I sort of had this view to say, as I learned more about, what are the types of jobs, what are the types of things that you can do in technology, I sort of had this view of, hey, maybe chief technology officer, sort of that CTO role would be a really good like North Star. And I would say for a lot of my career, I had that in the back of my mind going, hey, this is somewhere that I could end up. I think it sort of ties together a lot of what I'm interested in, a lot of what I'm good at. So I've used that as a little bit of an anchor as I think about different roles. Now, maybe as I've got a little bit older and kind of gone, is that still the destination? Maybe, maybe not. But it's been helpful to sort of help align as you change jobs into, am I learning things that continue to propel me in that general direction?
Interesting. So you just use that as I guess like a goal in your mind to help yourself be like, okay, whether I get there or not, I still want to take the steps for that time when I do get there so that I know everything there, correct?
Correct. And what I sort of looked at is what are some of the attributes of that job? So whether I end up in that specific job with that specific title, what are the attributes that I liked about that? It was the technology aspect, it was the impact on the business, the working with people, the strategy. So, sort of identifying what are three or four or five key attributes of that role that potentially then are interesting that, again, help guide you as you're deciding, which role, where do I want to go next?
Interesting. Wow. Okay, that's actually good to know. I think it's important for teenagers to, I guess, get an idea of where they want to go. But do you think that they need to have an idea? I mean, I think that's important to that you are open to all options. But do you think that they should have like a fixed idea of what they want to do so that they get on that path, and then, or do you think that they should just stay completely open and not know what to do at all?
I think if you can identify something as, and I sort of use the term North Star, right? Because it's something where you go, it helps me with a direction, but I may never get there. I think the challenge is if you don't know what you want to do, it's very hard to decide if you're on the right path or if the thing you're considering is the right thing. So as you look at a job, you're going, well, yes, I need a job. Yes, I need to earn money. But does this take me in a direction that I want to be going in? And does this help me get to my next thing? So whenever I've interviewed people, not as I'm looking for jobs, but as I'm looking to bring people in, I always try to get a sense of what is your 5-year plan? What is your 10-year plan? And a lot of people, may not have that, especially if you're a little earlier in your career. But having a view of where people want to get helps you then make sure that you're giving them opportunities and you're bringing them into a role that aligns with their motivation and their desire and the direction that they want to go.
Hmm. So then, if like a teenager wanted to choose their path and they don't know what to do, what do you think are like the best steps for them to take to get an idea of what direction they want to push themselves into, and then still be able to change later on if that's something that they do not enjoy?
It's a great question. I think the last part of that question is actually the key part. What are you interested in? What are you passionate about? Because if you get into a career, you get into a job that isn't aligned to your interest, it's not aligned to your passion, you're going to wake up every Monday morning going, man, it's Monday morning again. Versus, hey, I'm really excited. I'm going to go learn something new. I'm going to go do something impactful. I'm going to do something that's meaningful for me as opposed to, well, it pays the bills and I guess I got to suck it up for another week and kind of work through it. So, really trying to think about if you don't necessarily know where you want to go or you haven't identified a specific job or a title or what have you, thinking about what are the things that you're most interested in, right? Can you align your passion and your interest into a career or into a role that allows those two things to come together?
Right. So then if a child, or not child, a teenager is in their, let's just say, late high school or even early high school, do you think they have a set amount of time that they need to at least have an idea of where they want to, like what direction they want to head into, or is that like, are they open to do that even in university or even in their early 20s?
I would say it's never too early or too late to make a change. So certainly if you have a sense, the earlier you have that sense, even in high school, the earlier you can craft, what does my high school need to look like? What are the universities that I'm now considering that align and have the types of programs or the experiences that I might be interested in that will then help me launch myself into the career that I'm interested in. If you don't know what sort of where you want to get to, that's okay. But it probably means, as you go through high school, you need to kind of keep a little bit more of an open slate around, hey, I need to keep my options open. As I then maybe get into university, maybe perhaps you're looking at something that's a little bit more general, a little bit broader, versus being able to get into maybe a specific niche field. Again, none of those are inherently good or bad. It's more just as I come out of a program, what am I looking for? So if you don't know where you want to get to, then you're sort of applying for all kinds of jobs going, well, I graduated, now I need a job. How do I focus that search into a particular area?
Okay. And when you were talking about changing your career as well. So you've changed your career many times within the past, I think, 20 or 30 years. Could you talk about that? Like what was that journey like? And how did you know when to make the changes as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say when you say career change, I think you need to decide how you define that. I would say I've changed jobs many, many times. But if I define my career as being a career in technology, that's been pretty consistent. But within that, within those guardrails, the actual jobs have changed quite significantly. So I've started out, my very first job, even sort of before I got into real full-time work, as I said, working in a computer store, doing some IT work. I got into a large enterprise software company doing tech support. Then I moved into sales and realized, oh, I really love this sort of pre-sales, sales technology, sort of marriage, and did that type of role for many, many years across a number of different companies. And then, moved into a different company, had some different opportunities, moved more into the partnership side, but it's a lot of the same skills, right? It's still technology. It's still how do I sell? How do I connect with people? How do I show value? But the title maybe shifts. The focus shifts. Instead of being customer focused, now I'm partner focused. But a lot of those core skills remain. So it's coming back to what are some of those foundational elements? And I think you asked, as you think about defining your career, defining where you want to go, there's probably some commonality or common things that every single student and every single person in out there has some common aspects that are relevant for their career. So if I think about mine, it's communication, it's learning, it's technology. I think, we look at where we are today with things like AI and, everyone will tell you, hey, go learn AI. It's like, yeah, absolutely. That's the technology of today. If I rewind 30 years and someone said, go learn AI, people are like, I don't even know what that is, right? That's not something you can go and learn. We were still doing stuff in basic back in those days. So it's a very different time. But the durable skill is communication. The durable skill is curiosity. The durable skill is learning. Those things become foundational that if you can master those, the technology will continue to change. The opportunities will continue to change, but you've got this foundation that you can draw from to be relevant in those different areas.
Okay, and one thing that you said out of that that really stuck out to me was learning. I think when people finish school, they expect it to be okay, I'm done learning in a typical school-like environment. But I don't think people realize the same way that you are learning lifelong because of skills or changes that happen in your life or whatever it is that you're doing, a new topic that you're learning, you're always learning. I think that's important for us to clarify, is that just because you're done going to school and university doesn't mean that you're done learning, except this way it's better for you to learn in your own way because you get to choose your own topics rather than having to go through a system that you need to I guess finish, which is important as well. And then when you were talking about the skills, what do you think? I think what do you think are like the most basic general skills that each person needs to know to be successful?
Yeah, fantastic question. I think one of the key ones, and I can say this because I have a daughter who is, I think, almost exactly the same age as you, and I have a son who's now in university. I think one of the core elements or one of the core skills is communication. And I say that because I see so much of the communication today is, it's a quick text message, it's Snapchat, it's like, hey, I'm connected with that person. Well, are you having a meaningful conversation or are you just going, hey, we snapped each other today? Well, that when you get into the work environment isn't how people communicate. And that is pretty broad across any sector. That's not just a technology view. So I would say the core skill becomes what does that conversation look like? How do you have conversations with adults, with people that potentially are 5, 10, 15, 20 years your senior? not just so that you can come across and have an intelligent conversation, but the other skill that goes along with that is listening, right? How do you learn from people that have perhaps been in your field or your industry, whether it's a year more, 5 years more, 10 years, 20 years more? There's always somebody that you can learn from. So, how do you have those conversations? How do you make sure that you can approach that person, that you can introduce yourself, that you can have that discussion? Unfortunately, not much of that comes from a text message these days. That may be a way to communicate, but it's certainly not the only way to communicate.
Definitely. And I like how you said that there's always someone else that you can learn from, whether you're in your 70s or in your 80s, or even if you're like 10 years old or 15, you're always going to have someone else who's got knowledge in another thing that, or like another topic that they're good at, that you will always learn from. And there's this one saying that my dad always says, which is never be the smartest person in the room. Because if you're the smartest person, who are you going to learn from? The whole, like, the fun part of life is that journey of getting knowledge and learning from each other, but also teaching from each other as well.
And I mean, your dad's a very wise man, and I sort of look at the same thing to say, if you're the smartest person in the room, it's probably time for you to find a different room. Or, and there is an or to that, which is, if you're the smartest person in the room, how are you giving back? How are you bringing perhaps folks that are younger or newer in career? How are you sharing that expertise? If you're the smartest person in the room and you just like telling everyone that, that's not helpful. But if you're the smartest person in the room and you're willing to give back and invest in the next generation, invest in those that are up and coming, eventually they'll be the smartest in the room. And I would also say, you never know how tables may turn, right? Today, you may be the smartest person in the room. 3 years from now, that person that you thought was below you is now your boss. So, there is this ongoing relationship aspect to say, you know, always maintain positive, meaningful, strong relationships, and just generally be a nice person.
Yeah, kindness goes a long way, and I think that's something is lacking a bit compared to what it was before. I know my dad used to say that you were able to talk to any stranger without being scared. You were able to, apparently they were able to pick up hitchhikers without being scared as well. But nowadays it's like you don't know who has what or what type of person they are or anything, and it's a little scarier nowadays as well. But also it's because I think we've got that lack of kindness. Not that there isn't any kindness, there's a lot as well, but especially with news, you don't see that good side of the world that I think we all need to look into more. And even if it's just a little thing as like giving someone a smile or opening the door for someone, it's just like the littlest things that make someone's day.
Mhm. I would say it's those human interactions, right? Because I think as much as we look at the world today is more connected than it's ever been, I would actually argue in some cases it's less connected than it's ever been, because people are interacting through technology. But is that a meaningful connection? Maybe, if you know someone for many, many years. I look at it and go, hey, I have family all over the world. I've moved all over the world. When I was your age, things like FaceTime or the ability to do a recording like this really weren't available. So you didn't have those same ways to stay connected, but you also didn't have some of the perhaps more negative aspects where it's very easy for someone to publish something online and people can jump on that and you build sort of this negative momentum. A lot of those things occurred in different ways. So, as much as technology has brought people together or made it easier for people to connect, it hasn't necessarily done that in a way that is always positive.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that having technology is great, especially now that we can communicate with family from like overseas or wherever they're in the world. But when you have someone who's like your neighbor and you just start messaging them or like, hey, you want to play an online game or something, it's like, why don't you just go outside and take a walk together or actually, talk? Even though I know we're right now we can't do a recording in person, but it's a different feeling when you do it in person with someone rather than online. And one thing that you had said was about you traveling a lot. Could you tell me about your journey of where you've traveled a bit, and then why did you move to so many places?
Absolutely. So I've been very fortunate, as I said in my intro. I'm originally from the UK. I was born in England. I moved all over the world. I spent some time living in Ireland. I spent some time living in Hong Kong before we finally settled in Canada, where I spent a pretty significant portion of my life before then moving here to the US. As a kid, I moved a lot, obviously, because of my parents and their work and the opportunities. And at the time, I don't think I fully appreciated the real value of that. I was 8 years old when we moved from England to Hong Kong. And back then, we're talking sort of late 80s, there wasn't, as I said, these sorts of technologies. So when you moved halfway around the world, if you wanted to stay in touch with someone, you're writing a letter, right? And you send that, and maybe 3 weeks later, you hear back from somebody. So there isn't that immediacy. Telephone calls were still very, very expensive for international. Now, when we moved from Canada to the US, again, I moved for work. So I recognized my children were in a very similar position that I was in when I moved. But what was different was the ability for them to stay connected with friends and family during that move. So whether that was playing online games via Xbox, whether it was being able to FaceTime or just talk to people, that flexibility existed that wasn't there when I moved. But I think part of that travel experience, and then subsequently, my family does a lot of travel for vacation. I think what that's allowed me to do, and it's allowed my family to do, is really be better able to relate to other people. So once you've been to a different country, you've been to a different culture, you've experienced that firsthand, now you have, similar to that discussion we were just having, you now have that personal connection. You're not just reading about it online going, oh, that's how people in that country behave. Well, actually, that wasn't the experience we had. They're friendly, they're genuine, they're human beings. This is how they behave and interact. You have that first person experience, so you can form your own opinions versus what you might read online, which may or may not be an accurate representation of that country or that culture.
It's important, I think, that when you do travel though, because it does open your mind for a lot of things as well. When it comes to, I think it's an experience that everyone should like at least do at least once or twice in their life, because once you start doing it then you enjoy it and it becomes like a hobby. I know the first time I was on a plane, I was really young, so I don't remember it, but I do remember when I went to Disney for my fifth birthday, and it was so magical. It made me feel like everywhere in the world it would be magical. And then I went to India, and I'm like, this is the best feeling in the world, going on that airplane, the packing, everything. But I think it's important for people to go through that because one, the world is huge. It's huge, it's beautiful, and it's a place you should definitely explore and learn about. And two, it also, I think, it gives it helps you with further change, especially if you're moving. Because let's just say you have a job and you have to transition to another job, or you have to change if you choose to change your career drastically. I think it does make it a little bit easier based on one of the conversations you and I had as well. So, did traveling have anything to do with your success?
I don't know if I directly attribute traveling to my success, but I would say it's allowed me to more easily connect with new people. So even today, if I look at someone, we've just recently had someone join our organization, you look at their background, it's like, oh, I have some intersection points here. So you can very quickly form a relationship to say, oh, I used to live in that same country that you're originally from, or I've traveled to that place. So I can relate, or I can make that connection, which I think helps accelerate some of those interpersonal relationships. So I would say, yes, perhaps indirectly, it has been very beneficial just in allowing you to help form those connections, build those trusted relationships, perhaps a little bit more quickly because you can either visualize where they live, you can visualize or relate to some shared common aspect of your life or your life experience that then people go, oh, okay, yeah, I know this Barnaby guy. I mean, yeah, he's in the US, but he's from Canada and he's been in England and he's been to Australia and he's been to all these different places. You find a lot of ways that you can find an intersection and perhaps an icebreaker. Coming back to that communication piece we talked about early on, travel gives you far more of a foundation of conversational topics that you can use to break the ice and to get into a discussion or to get into a conversation versus, hey, what did you do this weekend? Well, I spent it sitting at home surfing the web or scrolling Instagram or whatever. Interesting, but that doesn't necessarily give you that worldview or that connection that someone can relate to.
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree. I think it's a much more interesting topic to have. And it all comes down to communication, then, I guess, right? Because then if you learn skills of communicating, you're able to connect with people. Connecting with people gives you opportunities, but you also make good connections um, with them as well. So I think that's like a major thing that is important. And it definitely is important. And then also, one thing I do want to say to the viewers is whoever is watching, make sure you stay tuned because there's going to be a super fun Would You Rather session and our mystery question coming up. So don't get bored because this is definitely not a boring conversation. This is something you definitely want to listen to. So now we're going to switch it up a little bit. When a teenager is about to choose their job, do you think that they need to focus on the money, how much they're getting paid from a job? Do you think they have to focus on the learning, or is there something else that they should be, I guess, focusing on?
It's a great question. And I don't know if there's one size fits all because there is an aspect of this that says everybody's situation is different. You know, some people, it may be 100% about the money because they need a place to live, they need groceries, they need all of those common basic things. And it's, I will do any job I can because I need the money. Other people may be in a little bit more of a fortunate situation where they say, hey, I already have a little bit of that already figured out. So now I'm looking for fulfillment. I'm looking for opportunity. I'm looking for advancement. I'm looking for a passion project. So I think it very much depends on situation. I wouldn't want your viewers to go away going, oh, it has to be about this. I think everyone's situation is different, but I think assessing that and really being deliberate to understand that is probably the key question. You know, what am I looking for in a job? Am I looking just for, I need something because I'm about to graduate and I need money to pay and to do something? Or do I have the ability to move back home and I've got a little bit of flexibility and I can maybe spend a little bit more time looking for something that is more personally fulfilling? But I think either way, it's making sure that's a deliberate discussion as opposed to, hey, well, there's a job here. It looks, yeah, the money looks okay. Why are you doing it? Right? Does it align to what you need right now? And that what you need right now may evolve over the course of your career where you go from, hey, I need this and I need more money because I'm starting a family or I want to buy a bigger house or I want to do something different, to a certain point in your career where you go, actually, you know what? It's not about the money anymore. It's maybe not about the title anymore. It's about, am I doing something interesting or does it have the right work life balance? So those questions actually continue throughout your career. And it's all about making sure you're aware and thinking deliberately about those as opposed to what is the right question right now.
So it's important for them to go based on their situation.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then what about titles? When people are in their job, I feel like based on what I've seen on LinkedIn, it's about people chasing their next promotion or the next higher title, or I guess going up that corporate ladder. When do you think that this could apply to anyone or teenagers? Do you think that people should care about their title or no?
Again, I think it's a deeply personal question because society as a whole, I think, views people based on title, right? And I would say not just title, but also job, right? I think there's some inherent biases where you go, oh, I'm a vice president, I'm a president, I'm a CEO. Okay, does that make you any better than anybody else? Not necessarily, right? You could be one of those titles and actually not be a very nice person to get around or to be around. Are you better? It depends how you define that. There is sort of this natural view of, I've got to continue to grow, I've got to continue to move up in my titles. But again, decide what's important to you, right? Do you want to chase the title? You may find that, hey, I could have the same title and the same job for 25 years, but I'm getting more and more efficient at it. And it's a job that perhaps rewards performance. So while the title may not change, my ability to earn money may change dramatically over that time. And if you think about perhaps a sales type role, right, you could be an account executive for 20 years and your title doesn't really change, but your account, your book of business, your ability to sell, your ability to earn bonuses may change dramatically over that time. So if you go, well, am I chasing a title or am I chasing revenue or income? It really depends on what that intrinsic motivation is.
Okay, that those questions were actually answered much differently than what I was thinking, but that's also given me a new avenue to think about, which I think is really, really cool. If you were 16 years old and you had to start over today, what would be the first thing you would focus on learning?
Great question. I mean, if it was today, I think the natural answer that I think everyone's going to expect is going to be, hey, go learn AI, right? That's the buzzword today. And yes, you need to understand what's the role of AI, how is it going to play a role in future roles in society as a whole. But I would actually say the core skills, the one that we've touched on earlier, which is go get really good at communicating. And but that's both spoken and written. So can you draft an executive email? Can you write a memo? Can you write a business case? Can you create those types of documents? AI will help you do those things. But if I say to AI, go create me a business case, well, what's my value? I'm just prompting that tool. At some point, I'm not adding value. So the core aspects of communication, I think, are really important. The ability to read content yourself and critically analyze it. AI will, again, help you with some of those things, but being able to do that is a core skill that I think everyone needs to really focus on. And then, as you touched on earlier, this concept of continuous learning, right? It's not, hey, I finished high school or I finished university, the learning is finished. You need to make sure that your skills and your ability to learn don't ever get stale, because that's where you start to perhaps get to a point where it's like, well, I can't learn new things. Therefore, the world accelerates away from me and I'm stopped at this particular point. So the natural one, like I said, I think, yes, AI, go learn it, but don't rely on it. Make sure you're doing the critical thinking. Make sure you're able to have conversations like this. You're able to relate to the human beings as much as you're able to relate to the technology.
Yeah, even when in our household, where when it comes to using AI, it is not to be used for doing any of your homework or your assignments or any of your, I guess, main skills that you need, but instead to help you with it. Like, for example, for me, I have my math class, and if I don't understand something, I'm not going to ask it to give me the answer. I'm going to ask it, okay, now you're going to teach me how to do this step by step without giving me the answer. Go one step at a time. If I get it wrong, help me redefine what I did wrong. And one thing with AI is that it's going to, most people are going to end up using it in a way where it just gets everything done. And I think that's going to cause a bigger divide in communication when it comes to writing down, whether it's emails or even, especially, talking with other people. Because now they've got AI tools where you talk to an AI instead of an actual person. And then people are like, oh, this is like the best thing in the world. I'm not lonely anymore. And now I shall talk to my AI. And I think that's going to end up causing like a huge and bigger divide in our system.
I think there's absolutely that potential, right? I imagine a world where you go, right, hey, AI, craft a response to this email, you send it off. The person on the other end has their AI respond to your email. And at some point you go, what exactly are the humans doing here? You may as well just let these two AI things talk to each other. And perhaps that is an outcome. But
Mhm.
what does that then mean for the individuals? And then it becomes the, well, what comes next, right? AI is not going to be the last technology that we ever invent. So, what comes after that? How are you pushing the boundaries? How are you looking and exploring the thing? You know, when you look at 20 or 30 years ago, computing wasn't where it was today. Computing has evolved, but now it's just the foundation that we build on top of. AI will become that new foundation that we then build on top of. And then there'll be something else that becomes the new foundation that we build on top of. So understanding how you can continually evolve, I think becomes that core skill much more so than, hey, I need to learn Word, I need to learn Excel, I need to learn ChatGPT. Yep, those are tools. But what are they in support of, right? They're in support of how do I communicate? How do I perform some function or get some output?
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that's good to know. I think that's important for everyone to understand as well, is that it's going to become that foundation that you're going to have to do anyways. So you might as well just start learning it now. So now we're going to get into our mystery question and then our would you rather session. Are you ready?
Sure, I am.
The question is, if you had to write a brutally honest letter to your own 16 or 17-year-old self about your jobs or about everything that you've done in life, kind of like a letter to the past, what do you think that letter would say?
Wow, that's a great question. I think there's probably a couple of things. I mean, one of them would be, hey, you made a decent bet with technology. Computers is kind of a key area. But I think it would also highlight the pace of change and how quickly things evolve. But what I would also say is while you're young, that's the time that it's easiest to experiment and try new things, right? I moved from Canada to the US after I had a family, and it was a fantastic experience. But when you're fresh out of school, you have different opportunities, maybe before you buy a house, before you've got a car payment, before you're locked into some of these other things. Those are great opportunities to go explore the world, whether it's for work purposes or for pleasure purposes. Looking at some of those early pieces, and it's not necessarily, hey, you've graduated, you need to get a job tomorrow, right? Here's an opportunity where, yes, you probably do need to go get a job relatively quickly, but does that need to be here? Or do I use this opportunity to go somewhere else? So I think the letter to my past self would be, hey, don't be afraid to explore, especially early on when you're not tied down. You don't have a lot of those existing commitments that perhaps keep you in one place or that financially tie you to a particular area. Go look at those things. What I would also say, though, is don't be afraid to look at something different, right? I think there is very much still the societal view of, hey, you come out of school, you get a job, you work somewhere for 20, 30, 40 years, and then you retire. And that's certainly a path, but you get to a point where you go, hey, maybe I can go do something on my own. Maybe I can go start something. I think being more open to that early on, because I don't think that's something that's inherently taught in schools today to say, how do you become an entrepreneur? How do you start your own business? It's much more about here's how you learn the skills. So I think I would probably figure out a way to include some of that in a letter to my past self.
That would be, I think, a very, very nice letter for your past self to receive. And before we do get into the would you rather session, you were talking about how the skills that school doesn't teach, like entrepreneurship or even simple things like managing team or finances. I completely agree with you on that one because as I'm going through my journey in high school, those are skills that I know are definitely important. But I had to learn from this podcast that I'm doing, from handling my dad's team and actually doing actual stuff in life rather than just in school because they don't teach the same skills. One thing that I had released is that I am homeschooled and I have been since the middle of grade 9. And from grade 9, during that time I was in there, I didn't learn those skills. Like our business class was teaching us Word, websites, which is fine, but it wasn't really teaching us how to actually do business. Like, how are we supposed to talk to people? What are the stuff when it comes to expenses and finances? And then we were learning on a Vista computer from 2007. I didn't know what that was at the time. I'm like, this is way too slow. And I'm like, why am I learning something from the past that I'm not going to end up using now when we have AI? They're not teaching any of that. And they still aren't when I talk to some people as well. And so I think that one thing, I don't really know how much of a say I have in this, but I think that schools really need to start adding a little bit more of these skills into their system.
Yeah, and I would certainly agree with that. I think one of the things, and you asked about sort of key skills, and what you've just touched on is one that I missed and I think is critically important, and it's financial literacy. right? And whether that's, it's not something that is necessarily taught in schools. Perhaps when you get into, if you go into a business degree, you get into some aspects of that from a business standpoint. But just that fundamental, right? What does it mean to actually pay rent? How do you budget for your cell phone, your internet connection, your car payment, your apartment, your groceries? That's a fundamental skill that I think perhaps differentiates, if you have strong experience at home, then you learn those things. If you don't have strong experiences at home, then perhaps you come out of school not knowing those things, and that maybe sets you up at a disadvantage. So there isn't that sort of common expectation or knowledge that I agree with you. I think absolutely is something that should be more key to the curriculum.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I think that we've been way too serious for this whole thing. So we're going to end this with an unnecessary would you rather session. And there'll be random questions that I don't think you've ever heard in your life, and I hope you enjoyed them.
All right.
Okay, so the first one is, would you rather have your hair instantly turn bright green every Monday or your voice auto-tune itself every time you try to be serious?
Oh, wow. Voice.
Your voice?
Mhm.
Okay, the next one. Would you rather have your only work outfit be a full tuxedo with light up sneakers or a normal outfit but with a giant name tag that says, "Hi, I still don't know what I'm doing"?
Oh, the light up sneakers for sure.
Okay, then would you rather, I like this one. Would you rather have your phone autocorrect every okay to okay bestie or every thanks to I am eternally grateful for your leadership in work emails?
Oh, I think the second one.
Okay. And then the last one is, my dad helped me with this one because he said that you might know more about this than I do. Would you rather have your ringtone permanently set to the Simpsons theme at full volume or have your GPS only give directions in opera singing?
Oh, The Simpsons for sure.
My dad said the same thing. Okay. Well, then, thank you so much, Mr. Jeans, for this episode. This was a really, really fun conversation. I think that it will give a lot to think about for anyone who is watching this. And for everyone who is, I hope you did enjoy this conversation. I'm Malina. This is the Young Leaders Podcast, and I'll see you in the next episode.